Hello and welcome to the Sunday Miracle Lab. I'm Shira Lee Mitchell, and today I am talking about um, dimensional challenges. People understand life through their own lenses. In other words, they have absolutely no frame of reference. It's like your dog. Your dog has no frame of reference for paying taxes or doing bookkeeping. It has no containers in its brain to put that kind of information in. It has no concept really of the complexity of like human relationships. Um, a jellyfish can imagine. I don't know what a jellyfish can imagine, but I know that I can imagine being a jellyfish and swimming in the water and doing what jellyfish do. And I can go there. I'm sitting here talking to you, and I can go there in my consciousness and imagine what it's like to be a jellyfish, to be in the water, to have all the little bubbles popping around me, to be swimming with other jellyfish. But a jellyfish, I don't believe, can understand what it's like to be human, cannot imagine what it's like to be sitting on a screen in a technological world giving a talk like I am here on here today. So consciousness is very it's just subject to whomever the person is, and it's just like schools. Like we think that we've got a playing field that's equal. We think that other people, like the public schools in the US are centered around everyone having a balanced education and having some understanding in different areas of life. But if you understand that most of the kids that go into those classes have no containers with which to put that information in, they have no reference, no ability to really contain or keep or store that kind of information. We all have certain kinds of storage. We all have certain interests, and this is all in the realm of personality. Personality is a beautiful thing, and yet it's like you take the whole, the real true whole picture of what's happening, and you fractile it between lots of different kinds of perspectives. And none of them are the whole truth. Now, there are people in their consciousness that can learn to straddle the different areas of life, can learn to embody enough time and energy in in multiple areas of life. And again, you have to have the memory, you've got to have the drive, you've got to have all of the things that support that kind of exploration in you in order to be able to really make that transition, right? A lot of people say that we can't choose who we love, and yet there are some people who can. There are some people who can shapeshift in their reality and can grow to appreciate any kind of person that is standing in front of them in their full potential and love that person. So, the thing that's very interesting about the dimensions is that we're just all so dimensionally challenged in a way. It's hard to imagine for people that really love food and really love pleasure and love all of the beauty of human life, that love sex, that love smelling roses and being out in nature and things like that. It's hard for those kind of people to imagine that there are people that do not enjoy those things, that do not have real in neural pathways that have opened into pleasure, that don't have neural pathways that have opened into the enjoyment of food. Now, there's a lot of different things that happen in the development of people that they become dimensionally biased, right? And so it's hard to imagine. One time I was massaging a woman, and I was a massage therapist earlier in my life. And one of the things that was interesting, this lady she had just ridden her bike a long distance across like states or whatever. And she was getting a massage, and we're talking, and she's like, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, this idea of why interpreting your dreams. Why would you interpret your dreams? Why would you study your dreams? I just don't get it. And I'm sitting there, and I am um, the opposite dominance. Now I have some dominance in her area, but not exactly the same way. But I'm the dream interpreting dominance, right? So I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, like my dreams help me so much. They help me understand life. They help me understand what's going on in my life. It's like this abstract model that I I get given to understand a deeper issue. And if I study it and interpret it, then I have the answers to my problems and my big questions in life. And it's not something she could really understand. So I'm like, but why on earth would you ride your bike across states? Like, to me, that's like the worst. Like just wasting time. Like, what's the purpose of that? What's the meaning of that? Doesn't make sense to me because I'm not that dominance fully. So the thing is about these dominances is that they can do a lot of different um, they open up different areas of life for each one of us. And so if you're not of that dominance, then you don't understand the tribalism and the nature of the people that do have that dominance. Not everybody wants to go to one of the um, anime conventions, right? But there are people that my nieces, they don't really connect up a lot of other places in life, but man, they get that. And that they love it. They love it. It's like they've got all of the equipment for it. Like they draw, they just they watch it all, they tell the stories, they want to tell their own stories. It's beautiful. Not everybody's into sneaker collecting, not everybody's into cabinet making, not everybody's into home beautification, not everybody's into spirit world adventure, not everybody's into laboratories and academia and scientific research inside of laboratories. And some of even the other kinds of people don't believe that you can actually get accurate readings inside a laboratory because life is too big to be contained all within a teeny tiny experiment. There are people that are absolutely brilliant. I remember sitting with my father-in-law, and he is like smart. He has brains on his brains. He just knows about everything, knows so many different things. And he was talking to me about hypnosis, and he was talking to me about the subconscious. He had never taken an adventure into his subconscious self. And for somebody that's like me, I've adventured into my subconscious and my unconscious and my deeper realms every single day. So I can't imagine that. I can't imagine being somebody that's completely virgin to that territory, right? And there are some people that are more virgin to university learning. It's very interesting. I don't have the way my system works. It's not the same as um, somebody that operates from just a brain level, right? My mind itself is smart, but it's not the sharpest part of me, right? It's more like how my creativity and my bigger picture understanding and different things like that synthesize together. It kind of almost supplements for a brilliant mind, right? But it's a more it's coming about it from a very different way, very different way of researching. So our dimensional differences are huge. They're absolutely huge. There are people out there that food, oh, hello, happy Sunday. I don't know who's here. Um, there are people that food is just something like fuel, like gasoline they put in their body. They don't really care what it is. They don't care what it tastes like. It doesn't really mean that much to them. They're really not that into it, right? I have a brother-in-law like this. He just is like not into that part of life. And he's opened up to it a bit more being married to my sister because my sister is very much that way. And so it's like we teach each other about the other dimensions by being involved with one another. So my dominance is that of being somebody who is spiritually dominant. And we can actually study. I'm a master hand analyst, and one of the things that my teacher did was take the information that had been done on palmistry, and he applied it using scientific process, and he did so over the course of decades. And he was truly curious to figure out, what are the hands communicating? Everybody's hands are different. All of the ancient Greeks knew this. Socrates, Aristotle, all of these were hand readers. They studied the hands, and because they knew that there was something really important in the hands, and that it was a map of you know I believe it was Plato said it was a map of um, personality, and also spiritual influences, or otherworldly, or what was the word that he used? Uh, the influence of the soul. And we have found that in hand analysis, in our studies over decades, hundreds of thousands of people that we have studied. And what we found is that the hand is a map of consciousness. And so the basic four temperaments, or the basic four dimensions of life, your handshake tells which one of those you are. If it's short and squat, it's then you're a doer, and you have the value system of a doer. You have the tribalism of a doer. You think that the people that are like you are good people, and the people that aren't like you are bad people, right? Same thing with the mentally dominant. Mentally dominant people are, they belong to another tribe. And that tribe is actually really disconnected where true resources come from, right? It's not connected to the ground. It's not connected to the body. It's not connected to the practicalities of life. And the tribalism that goes with that particular orientation is also, um, you know, that they believe that the people that are like them are good people, and the people that aren't like them are, they don't really believe in good and bad people. The air folks, or the learners, the people who kind of um, elevate education and science and things like that, right? And which is very popular. If we were to look right now is at all of the archetypes that exist and all of the kinds of people that are out there, we would say that this is the most common archetype right now. It used to be more of a male archetype, completely, mostly. There's a lot of females that are embodying this archetype nowadays. So if we were to look at, I don't know if you've ever watched Avatar, but the cartoon Avatar is fantastic. Love the Last Airbender. Um, great show. I actually watch it like twice a year. Over and over, just because I like it. I don't know what it is about it. I just like it. It's got a lot of the earth, air, fire, water from hands. It's got a lot of the it's got a lot of humor and different things in it. But anyways, it's a cartoon, but I love it. My kids got me started on it, and then my husband and I like, sit around and watch it a couple times a year. Anyways, each of these tribes in the in the story, there's the airbenders, and there's the earthbenders, and there's the waterbenders, and there's the firebenders, right? And that's essentially like the four different dimensions of life, and the people that belong to those tribes. And so if you can imagine the last airbender, this is a story where there's no airbenders at all anymore. There's only one, and he's kind of they've been knocked out and destroyed, right? And throughout the story, they begin to rebuild the airbending nation. But right now, actually, if we were to say what is the most popular tribe, it is the air tribe. So we would say that most of the people in the world are in the air tribe right now, or at least in the developed nations and the Western nations, especially. So when I went and looked at the kids' hands in high school, um, I think that I read 100 hands one night, and there was like 5 other kids that had other, and all of the rest were air and water mixed. So, water tribe people have a completely different, like, tribalism, and, we would call that, it's like on one really extreme side of it, we'd call it actually, kind of a woke culture, right? And actually on one there's the other people that kind of join into that are air-based people that also drive, like, in other words, they have a united, um, like, air people are very fair, and water people are very emotionally focused, and they're focused on how other people feel and how they feel, right? And so the way this has kind of come together has been, if we would, the air and the water joins together into an archetype that we call it morning mist, because the way that they feel is like, like Elon Musk feels, or like, um, most of the actors in the world feel. They have this, like, this opinion, this they're thinkers, and they have an idea of how life works that works for them, and they also have sensitive feelings. And it's very interesting because, like, if you were to study the older archetypes, the old archetype that almost everybody were peasant hands, which, in other words, we all had to just really work hard to survive. And so we were spending most of our days doing really basic care things, trying to get food and shelter and things like that. And very few people could go into the universities and into the study and into education, right? And so this is kind of a luxury. This is kind of like a a luxury of where we are as a humanity, that this age of Aquarius is upon us, right? This age of the, if you were to put the water and the air together, that makes like Aquarius energy, which is morning mist, right? It's they're very technologically adept, and they're also have a lot of emotional skills, right? And the combination of those things, it's like it's almost like if a society is pampered enough and shielded from the realities of life enough that they can go to that they can have time to feel their feelings, right? And to collect their feelings and to write poetry about their feelings and different things like that, right? And if they can go to school and study and be in their thoughts, or even really the creatives as well. I mean, in a way, it's the earth folk that makes it possible for all of the other three to exist. And we have a very thriving and beautiful society because we have the base needs met, right? That the earth folk or the doer folk meet. Because there's one sect of the population in all around the world that grows most of the food, distributes most of the food, and does most of the work in the whole country that's actually necessary for survival. They do the plumbing, they fix the roof, they do all these different things. And the people that embody these archetypes, they are they are they have a tribalism. And right now it seems like the other three, which honestly have come about because of the hard work of the other group, it's now like the energy is that they're all turning on that energy, which is the conservative energy, right? The farmers, the people that have a practical orientation, right? You will never take someone with a practical orientation and convince them that there's anything other than really two genders, right? You will never, like, you could argue with them till the end of the earth, but the way that their minds and their bodies and all of their systems and neural biology and their, all of their things are wired up to receive information in a very grounded, matter of fact way. And the subtleties are not important to them. The variations are not important to them because they like have their intuition and their ear absolutely tuned to the survival, um, channel, right? I mean, if you've ever gone on to any of those shows that are like, Wild and Alone and Afraid or something like that, or, out in the woods, survival shows, and they drop people off naked with nothing and they're supposed to survive, right? This is kind of how the way that men's minds are molded from the time that they're little, right? They are naturally interested in those survival things, and they are interested in things. They are interested in um, all of that, and so they end up developing, like their brains work like they're on an island every morning naked and afraid, and how are they going to how are they going to survive, right? And a lot of these folks have had some kind of major trauma with poverty. They've had some kind of major trauma with parents that taught them about the Great Depression and things like that. And they're really motivated in very basic ways, and they're very very practically oriented, right? And they don't care about the subtleties between the pants. Either the pants work or they don't, but they don't really want to have 20 different pairs of pants in their closet, and they don't care to have more than two colors of t-shirts, right? Maybe the one that they wear for the nice events and the ones that they wear to work, right? And that they're simple. They like to eat the same things. They really like their alone time. um, I had an interesting, I was remembering just some of the, if you look at that deeply masculine, um, the deeply masculine archetypes that are out there, like, like one person I went to school with, like all he wanted to do was be in nature, right? He just wanted to be out. He wanted to be hunting. He wanted to be fishing. He wanted to be just out in nature. To him, nature was congruent. It was simple. He could find peace there. He could find solitude. To him, that was like going to church every day. And his tolerance for relationships and relationship drama and all of those things were very, very, very little, right? And if you look at, there are earth paw women too. I have a sister, one of my sisters is like that. And she gets overwhelmed. Her territory is really important. She gets overwhelmed when other people come and invade her territory. She gets overwhelmed when she spends too much time with other people. She needs to have, earth people will pick fights just to get alone time. And if you have earth people in your life, you will, it's very wise to understand this, because sometimes it isn't about anything. If they come home from a hard day at work and you just start bombarding them with things, they're going to pick a fight so that they can go have a few minutes to decompress and find their peace from the activity of the day. So, you could sit there and say, okay, well, and the thing is that they have, like their systems, their tolerance for the emotional. So in other words, if you were to look at that person, their emotional self is the weakest part of them, right? If you can say, like, they have a really strong relationship with the doing realm, but the emotional realm to them is not as important, and so it's very small. It's like this really tender and sweet part that they keep way in the back, way protected, right? And um and they're more dense, so they don't actually pick up on all the subtle things, right? They don't pick up on the subtle emotions. They don't pick up on the nuances that happen in relationships. So in this way, I mean, we could say that they're, like, we can look at people that have spectrum things, right? And they're on ranges within that spectrum, right? um, this is a different spectrum altogether. It's so interesting to me, because I have some people that say, well, you're arrogant, because I say, well, you know like, if you have to go do a plant medicine that is super duper strong, like mega strong, to get you to form a spiritual connection, right? Then you're probably an earth person, an earth dominant person, a doer dominant person, a physical body dominant person, right? Because, um, or a mentally dominant person, because, the other dominances are very sensitive to those subtler spiritual. realms. They can hear those voices. They've got senses that are turned up in all of those different areas. And so it makes it to where, we can be in the same room, we can be in the same space, and we're totally tuning to completely different details. And if you were to say the whole truth that's here was brought here and divided among all the personalities, right? And if we want to be advanced, right? Like the first rule is to be yourself, right? Like if you are that dominance going and trying to be another dominance, you're going to be like a fish trying to climb a tree, and you don't have any of the memory, you don't have any of the neural pathways, you don't, I mean, it's just difficult. Think of the things that you hate doing most in the world. Those are probably the things that are the other than your dominances, right? And you don't have the equipment, you don't have the hard drive, you don't have the desire, you don't have the capacity, like and to force yourself to have that is a difficult process, right? Like you can grow and change and be different, but my personality is one that likes kind of take on that challenge of, can I mold myself into this other form, right? and and I can do it. I've done it, but it's not easy and it's not fun. I'm somebody who is not spatial. I am not exacting. I am very non-exacting in my language. I'm in non-exacting in the way I cook, and it's in every part of my life. I'm not exacting in the way I drive, any of those kind of things. But like becoming a cabinet designer, I had to become very exacting because it either fits or it doesn't. And then there's no, like, molding the cabinet into something else once it's built. You can remodel it, I suppose, but that is a lot of work. So, yeah, so the different dominances, we like, and to really understand that most of your problems that you're having with other people are because they are coming at life from a completely different tribalism and a different aspected way, and that they have different memory and different hard drives and different desires and interests and all of those different things that are contributing to that. There are people who have no interest in education. It's amazing to me that there are people that get on and they're like, I have all of these credentials, and like nobody else has the right to talk on any of these subjects except for me, because except for the ones that have those credentials. But let's just look at therapists, for example. In the study of therapists and hand analysis, it shows up in the personality. That's if you were to mix a mentally dominant person with a creative dominance as well. So they a double dominance. A lot of times there's always a leader within the individual. But so these two dominants, you mix them together and that makes a therapist. Hello, I don't know who's here, so say your name or don't, that's fine. So whatever dominance, so that's the therapist dominance. Now, people that have that dominance, they're really good at illuminating a path for others and creating, like they study books. Hello, they study books. They read a lot. They learn a lot, and then they go to others and help them expertly find a way through whatever it is that they're dealing with. Now, you'll find that some therapists are just pure. I had one therapist I took my kid to that was a water air, and water air people are way different. Sensitivity is one of the main things that they value. So I had a son who was very mentally dominant, and this therapist was trying to peg him that he didn't have feelings, or that he was like had something wrong with him in his makeup, because he didn't want to just sit and feel his feelings with this guy all day. Right? Now, this is how erroneous this particular therapist was. That, in other words, anyone that's not like him, that comes in to see him, and they don't want to do what he wants to do, then they must have something wrong with them, right? This is what a therapist who's working with kids told me would behaved like. And that's really frightening, right? He's outside of his normal archetype, right? The normal archetype is air and fire. The thing about air and fire that's really hard is that they're just always on to a thousand new paths and they've left the other ones. And there's not a lot of emotional intelligence sometimes in these people. And so they've got all these strategies to help people solve things, but most of the time they don't really solve things. They get you coming back and rehashing things, um, but not actually going to the place of actually truly feeling and transmuting, right? Because they're, for every individual, they're different and they all have different access points. So when someone's coming into you for healing, to try to get some clarity, to try to get some um, mental structures and things in place. There's a lot of different personalities, right? And there are personalities that are completely other than that are in therapy as well. But I would say that the two that I find the most are more like the Aquarius morning mist, which is a thinker feeler combination, and and then the fire and the water, right, which is the illuminator. And so we see this a lot in therapists, but there are people that actually have an inner, um, they almost have like a degree from a past life and it shows up on their hands as well. And these people are really genius, more so even. They're just genius at helping people navigate their issues, right? Taking them to the next level that they can take them to. And so this is a gift marking because it's not something that they earned. It's not a degree that they earned. It's not something that they earned through experience like the major hand archetype is. People can also go that path from life lesson, right? In other words, their life lesson has been they just were injured. Um, Yeah, I have almost no air in my chart either. I have one air planet, and I have developed air in this life. The hand analysis and going to school for hand analysis and also doing cabinets qualified me for some air. Like I earned a degree in air this time around, right? Because it was a very mental and exacting kind of thing. And same thing with hand analysis. It's a pretty mental and exacting kind of art. So, yeah, my two main that I pretty much started out with are earth and water. And earth is, it's the most loyal, and water is the most caring, and fire is, of course, the most creative, and air is the smartest, right? And you mix in the different ones together. You mix the smarts and the water, the feeling, the caring. It makes a very sensitive individual, which is why we call them morning mist, because they feel like that morning mist in a, you're walking through the forest in the early morning and there's a mist and it's fresh and it's full of ideas, and there's a sensitivity and a conductivity to the way that they feel. So that's what my teacher named them. And yeah, so the therapist, so like you'll see people argue that like you didn't go to school for this. Well, guess what? There are some people that could go to school for 3 centuries and they still wouldn't get what it is to be a healer. They still wouldn't get what it is to be really a therapist. They really wouldn't have the inner tools to actually help people find their way back to themselves, right? And the degrees that are out in the world do not, like you have to jump through a bunch of hoops and you gotta be like a little dog in a little show, right? And you got to do that, and there's a lot to that, and it is very admirable for people to go to school and to learn these things. There's a lot of chinks in the whole thing. We're kind of seeing a little bit of chink in that armor, and that we're starting to see that these things that, like, if there are powers that get into these institutions and they mold the education of all of the people that are coming up, it is a powerful um, place that the whole thing can completely go awry. And we're finding that so many of our sacred things and our things that we were cornerstones of medical science and all of those things, we're finding out that many of these things are complete sham, completely not what we thought they were. And so we have this, this age of Aquarius is like, like things have finally emerged from the 15, 16, 17, 18, 1900s into this more modern society where people are disconnected from the land. People are disconnected from the very things that they need to survive. They're abstract. In other words, somebody that an air person goes and gets a scholarship, and they think all money comes from scholarship. And doesn't everybody have a scholarship? And people that work for the government, they're like, well, then you just go get another check, and you just get some more money. You just get approved for more money. Well, what's wrong with you that you can't pay your bills because you can just go get approved for more money, right? Like in other words, people get into their neural structures. They get completely disconnected from the reality of where value comes from, right? And the realities of survival. And so this can be a really, right now, a lot of the tension that we're seeing in relationships and in the world is the disconnect that is going on. Females naturally are kind of disconnected from this reality, right? There's one thing going around that women didn't have the right to get credit cards till the 70s. Well, actually, I don't think anyone really had credit cards until the 70s. But and it may have been better if none of us could have gotten credit cards. I mean, credit cards are these greedy little companies, right? And it's like they somehow have enlisted the businesses to pay them for the transactions. So if I were to own a business and someone comes in and they use a credit card, then I have to pay the credit card company 3 to 4%. It used to be like 6%, I think. And then they're also charging interest to the person that is just astronomical interest, right? And this is kind of an aside point, but my gosh, it's most people that are really smart don't use credit cards, and they don't buy stuff that they can't afford. At the same time, for a lot of poor people, without their credit cards to kind of bring into the mix, they wouldn't ever be able to get tires and things like that because they can kind of, do things over time. So, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but a lot of females, the water archetype is very disconnected from uh, the realities of where these things come from too. Now, there are those exceptions to women, earth women like myself, that do massage, and we're just grounded into practical, useful things, right? Like rubbing the sore feet of people that come in that worked all day is actually a pretty practical thing to do, a practical way to add value. Growing food is another really practical way. So there's a lot of earth mamas out there that are canning and doing all kinds of different things, but it's not average for a woman to embody a earthy archetype. And the earthy archetypes are, even if you were to look at, like the archetype behaves differently in a woman than it does in a man. And, due to estrogen dominance, right? Like even when, what was the name before? Bruce Jenner transitioned into Caitlyn Jenner. Before when he was he had, he was a jock. He was an earth-based, masculine, doer kind of person. And then, and I guess his kind of doing was running races and being an athlete, right? That is one level of doing, is competing with the body. And when he started taking all the estrogen shots and stuff, his hands turned soft and spindly and things like that. And the you could definitely see that the water had moved in, and so he had made a huge shift into being more emotionally dominant due to the use of hormones, right? And and so it's a very interesting um, thing to kind of look at, because the way that life kind of set us up as masculine and feminine is that men actually get um, too much estrogen when they spend too much time at home feeling their feelings and things like that, and they feel better when they go out and get testosterone hits from getting things done. So nature rewards us all, men and women, with testosterone hits when we do competent doing. And but men need so much more than us females do on just to feel base level okay. And it's actually one of the saddest things as a mom is if you are someone who has tuned your child into how do you feel, how do you feel, just all about feelings. Life's all about feelings, right? If you continue to push a child in that way, which I did to one of my kids, and not knowing, not on purpose, just because I was emotionally dominant, right? But the more that he actually just gets into completing task dominant and not, I don't ask him how he feels anymore. I ask him what he's up to. I ask him, what are you doing today? What are you accomplishing today? Because if you've ever sat with your kids sitting on the couch um, with low testosterone and feeling absolutely awful, it's an awful thing to watch a man not have enough testosterone. It's absolutely awful. It's devastating. They're grumpy, they're bitchy. You look at the old grumpy old men. Grumpy old men are missing testosterone, and all of our young men will be grumpy young men if they don't get enough. And whereas as nature rewards us females to going into it rewards us for nurturing and community building exercises, right? So even complaining and gossiping and those things, we get rewarded with estrogen for. And we need a lot more estrogen, and estrogen feels good. So, it's hard because we can go and we can gossip with other women and tell stories about other women and things like that. And we get a big old estrogen hit, and it makes us more beautiful and it makes us more young and it makes us feel amazing, right? And we can go and we can complain to our partner. Eating more meat and less carbs helps to balance the hormones, helps the testosterone and other hormones too. Yeah, well, it is very interesting because if like a lot of females really benefit in eating more meat because it grounds them more. Um, um, there's a lot of people that prescribe to people that are more on the emotional dominance, and like I just know some naturopaths that prescribe you need to have root vegetables and you need to have meat and you need to have all these grounding things in your life because your personality is to leave that part of you out, right? Whereas, um, like the really earthy masculine men, they will forget to drink water. Most of them, my chiropractor says that most of the ranchers that come in, they have these headaches and these aches and pains and everything hurts. And then she's like, she just gets them to drink 8 cups of water and then it all clears up, right? Because they're just become dry as the desert, right? In themselves from not drinking enough water. The other thing about them is that they will often they just like their meat and their potatoes and their pants the same way and all that kind of stuff, right? And they would actually they do a lot better if they'll integrate a little bit of salad and a little bit of greenery and a little bit of color, right, into their systems. Um, and so we can actually begin to change our orientation and expand our worldview just a little bit by um, embodying by eating differently, because what we eat changes our dimensional um, biases just a little bit, right? It just gives us a little push in a different direction because the energy of the fruits and light vegetables is going to cause a refreshing in our energy. The groundedness of just eating meat for somebody who's not in their body is life changing, because it's a really physical way to get in the grounding. And yeah, so we have all of these different elements and all of these different pieces, and most of the time, like, we come and approach other people, and we look at their behaviors and we look at their actions, and we do that based upon our own neural pathways. We in our judgments and our ideas about the world, things like that, they say a lot more about us than they do about anybody else, because we see the world the way that we are and not what's truly there. We don't see that everyone, everyone is doing the best they can with what they have and with what they know and with their tribalism and their base personality. And becoming spiritually advanced is learning how to integrate the other dimensions and how to bring them into the moment. Because when we, most of just as in humanity right now, we are all fighting with one another over the bathwater that doesn't matter, right? The essential true nature, our true nature of love, our true nature as caring beings that actually do care about the whole and care about everyone. And you can look at other people that are causing, let's just say Elon Musk, for example. He is supposedly one of the richest people in the world, right? But he's also one of the people that is adding the most value in the world. And that's how it works, is people that add value, they add money, right? But the problem that's hard about one dimensional, or the earth dimensional people, right? They live in a particular dimension. They only value, their value system of what they value isn't art, and it isn't um, caring, and it isn't family connection. They're subconsciously attracted to those things because life is making them expand into those areas, right? So they're attracted to the emotionally dominant woman who cries her eyes out and has connections and has community and has ease in all of these areas, right? Because subconsciously, he's looking to become more whole. And same thing with her. She's looking to become more practical by, by getting involved with one of these people. And so, again, because these archetypes don't just extend to masculine and feminine, but I would say that if we were to study all of the archetypes in the world, most of the archetypes that men prefer to be in are earth and air. They take up a lot of room in that space. And if you want to know what the patriarchy is, folks, that's what it is. It's earth and air. They've decided what's real and what's the way to do things, and they've got a system, right? And that is the establishment that that has been established in the world, right? Whereas, traditionally, females have been more interested in nurturing and having children and things like that. I'm sure there have always been females that are interested in other things and in being involved in what is that card? It's like the something of wands. It's playing with the boys, right? There's always been females that have wanted to play in the boys' worlds. We used to have these clubs that were just gentlemen clubs, right? And they'd smoke cigars and drink together and things like that. And um, we used to have one here in Montana, and in my town, called the Montana Club. And they would all go up, and it was the place that they could all just be together and be men, and be a little feral, possibly. But these kind of clubs used to exist, and then females started getting into those clubs, right? The thing that's difficult is that the only way that men really change and are held accountable in society is by other men, and they have a very rough way of doing it. They're not soft and sweet the way that us females are, and the way that we discipline, right? They punch each other in the face and things like that. And that way of being works for them. And now that's called toxic. Now that's like, um, like, we've kind of, I know that I raised my four sons to not necessarily be the scrappy kind of fellows, right? Because I thought that was wrong, that was bad, that was toxic, that was whatever, and in today's society, it's not okay for men to get into fist fights and things like that. And so now those things just go underground and they get hidden. We don't see them as much anymore. When I was in high school, the boys would beat the living tar out of each other, right? And sometimes with really, really severe consequences. The more nasty they got. But those kind of things are now underground and are crimes that kids commit by being a little bit naughty and things like that, which they, like men have to, beings that they're kind of born into the survival show, and they have no other really way of, I don't know, the way that their brains are kind of cooked and the way that their orientation is, the way that the tree that they like to climb um, is one of being a bit dangerous, of being the person that knows, right? And you see that it used to be, we used to wrestle. Yeah, wrestling is a great way, and a lot of men really enjoy those things, and they've kind of now have these sports players that kind of do it for them. But yeah, but it's not toxic. Like, it's not toxic. Actually, sometimes getting smacked in the face is the least of the things that can happen to you in a man's world, right? Um, like to them, they're way more scared of the emotional things that us women will do, like cut off relationship and cut off reputation and things like that for people. They're really, really frightened of the kind of ways that we fight and the ways, it's like females, they kind of gaslight themselves in a way to, like, in a female orientation or water dominance, which is emotional dominance, right? And you've got to imagine, the emotional world is an inner world that is connected to an emotional imagination. And everything, it takes a long time for a woman to get to the place of, like, finding the truth that is hers inside of that arena, right? It takes a long time um, to, because it's like if we have buckets and buckets of resentments and hurt feelings. I mean, there are some females that are so sensitive, and some males today too, that are so sensitive that um, they will, just any little raised eyebrow hurts their feeling, any glance that isn't 100%, anyone that doesn't just pay attention to them or listen to them and just all be quiet, everybody's just quiet whenever they speak, those kind of things. Like, there are, like, I had a friend that had not only sensitivity, but there's also these markers you can get in your hands. They're called um, um, they're called girdles, and they actually sit over the heart area, and there are these other layers that are kind of like Doctor Who, other dimensional. They're just other dimensional um, giftings in a way. And Richard and Hans, he would kind of call them a curse because they they just cause so many problems for the owners, right? And these are people that like if we were to have 20 people respond to, that witnessed an emergency or some kind of crime or something like that, um, like how we're wired up inside will depend upon what we saw and what details we tune to. And this person is going to build a mountain out of a molehill, right? And they're just absolutely brutal markers to have when you're in middle school, because you can get so tied up into thinking that everybody's thinking about you and talking about you and saying nasty little things about you and stuff like that, that it just is absolutely, absolutely a tormented place to be. And a lot of people that have these are tormented. But it's also really a lot of gifting because if they're an artist, they can add in all kinds of extra detail. If they're a sound engineer, they can put in 20 other layers of subtle sound behind everything, right? Because they hear more, they see more, they imagine more is there than is actually there. And in a way, these people, it's like they come without a spacesuit to a harsh planet. It's like going to Mars without a spacesuit, except for it's planet Earth. And these markers, they're great for writing fantasy stories and laying layers down in the back of music and things like that. They are absolutely hell on relationships for those people. Water is so good. I love water, and I'm just really thirsty for water today for some reason. Yeah, but water, if you look at the place that actually is most females are in their emotional imagination, imagining them and Jason Momoa, or they're imagining, just watch the old movies like the Jane Austen movies and stuff like that. And there's all this imagination and romance that's built into these subtle details of things, right? That are interrelational. And this is pretty much for females across most cultures, unless they are really much more tied to the land and tied to the practicalities of life. That I would say that the main archetype developed during the time of fine ladies and tea. Just that became really refined, where the ladies were kind of separated out from the ladies who worked in the kitchen, right? And they're different kinds of creatures. The ladies that sat in the parlors, and the ladies who worked in the garden and the kitchen and took care of the children and things like that. And so the more Momo, yeah, yeah. So like us females can go into our imagination, um, and imagine what something is like. Like, let's say my 30-year high school reunion is this year, right? So we could go, like, and it's always at every reunion, there's always old loves that rekindle and things like that, right? When couples get back together that were in high school, and then now they're divorced, and they've met each other again, and they've fallen in love. So we have quite a few couples in our class that have experienced this. But high school reunions and stuff. I mean, so we can imagine what it's like, like going to that reunion, what we're going to wear, what's going to be happening, all the social dynamics. Same thing with weddings and holidays and all of the different things that we do and plan as women, and the things that are important to us, right? We put so much energy into the subtle details of what we're wearing and the presentation and all of those different things of different events and social gatherings. And being emotionally dominant gives us an actual preference. Like, if we could sit and talk with a friend or go out and work in the garden, we would prefer to sit and talk with a friend, or maybe to go out and work in the garden with a friend, right? But the conversations and us girls love to do things together. We love to raise kids together. We love to take them to the park together. We love to be together. When we're little, most of us have like a little bosom buddy, and we hold hands and we go everywhere together. I had a number of bosom buddies when I was younger. And but we get really into emotional imagination, and we can actually go into scenarios of what it's going to be like going to the 30-year reunion, and who's going to be there, and what they're going to say, and how they're going to react to what I'm wearing, and all those different things. So we can almost write a story and imagine a whole scenario playing out, based upon, and it's all just happening inside our emotional imagination. It's called emotional limerence, right? And so as women have a ton of emotional limerence. Men have physical limerence. So they imagine body parts and things like that, right? And that's like, it's like more of an animal imagination of physical things, physical features, right? As females are more like, if you look at our kind of porn, which is romance novels and things like that, these stories of that are romantic, that we you know, for females, romance is important, or more important than sex, right? It is more important. So, you know, withholding sex from a man it's like the equivalent of withholding romance from a female. Men are very, very quick to give up their bodies, but they're very, very slow to give up their emotional self. They're very slow to love. And us females are very quick to love and give of our emotional self, but we're not very quick to give our bodies. Um, so, I mean, in the average females, now different females are wired up a little differently, but emotional imagination is not reality. Okay, it's completely different than reality. It's a level, the emotional imagination that's going on, and community um, standings and all of those different things, and community connections, all of those things are another dimension of life. And that whole dimension of life is usually in hands. It's represented by the left hand, and the right hand is the outer dimension of life. And for most men, everything's happening in the outer dimension. And then for most females, everything's happening on the inner dimension. And those are our natural territories. So, uh, you know, we have our, you know, success in family and community. And for men, success in the world is what dominates them. And so, but emotionally dominant females, there's a lot of behaviors that we do that are really natural to us, but very unnatural to those that are not like us. And you know, it's a very versatile world, the world of emotional imagination and the world of emotions. You know, there's so much variance that happens. It's all over the place. And, you know, if we're being informed by our bitterness and all of the other things, the buckets that we've amassed through our hypersensitivity, we can have buckets that are just absolutely full of unprocessed things. And what you find in most like marriages, why women end most marriages, is because they have a bucket that is just too full. You know, there's too many buckets, too many full of too many different things. And so there's a lot of skills, you know, to become an advanced emotionally dominant person. We need to have a lot of emotional skills, especially dumping bucket skills, right? And getting rid of buckets. And the whole thing is kind of framed through, you know, females see the world as there are people that are nice and there are people that are not nice. There are people that share, there are people that give, there are people that care, and there are people that don't care. And that this is the code, or the tribalism that emotionally dominant people, and most of which are females, because again, nature rewards us for being emotionally focusing and spending our time in that emotional limerence area. um, and you know, we just naturally go there, right? We naturally go there. We're concerned about relationships, we're concerned about connections, we're concerned about how people feel about one another, we're concerned about whether or not people are being nice to each other, things like that. So you can see that even in the world of politics, right? Like um, never before have we seen laws that are being passed to protect people's feelings from getting hurt from imagined scenarios, right? We've never seen those hypothetical scenarios. In other words, like most of the laws relate to real property, right? Like this is mine, this is yours, this is my house, this is your house. Um, this is my body, this is your body, right? Now we have a lot of laws that are overreaching that, because my mind is my mind, and your mind is your mind, and your moral code is your moral code, and my moral code is mine, right? And in the world of men, and in the world of physical dominance and reality, that's how things work for them, and they are tuned to that reality, right? Like, they know what's coming. They protect the herd because they look out for the kinds of things that can cause the herd danger, right? Um, and it's really, actually, to be a man is to be more of it is a sacrifice life, right? Just as much as it is for a female. Females sacrifice for the emotional reality that they want in their homes, right? And men sacrifice for provision, and they often bring a lot of other people into the provision. And we have a lot of things that, as we are kind of exploring new archetypes, as humans, right, switching up all of the different archetypes, we have all these new confusions that are happening because of the the dimensional overlay that's happening, right? In other words, I do believe that there are people that have a territory, they have the memory, they have the wiring, they have the interest, they have all of the capability and the experience to be living in that realm, and to be gatekeeping that realm, to be the person that is responsible, not necessarily gatekeeping, but responsible for that realm of life. And females, um, we have always been the gatekeepers, or the keepers of the emotional, the connections, the holidays, the traditions, and those kind of things coming forward from the generations. And we've been the protectors of those things that are sacred, the beautiful birthdays and the beautiful times of gathering, and the relationships. We're the ones that are encouraging the relationships to get back together, and to form, um, and to expand everyone that we come into contact with. We're expanding them to connect into the relational brilliance and the emotional intelligence that we connect into, because that's our world. And the thing that happens that's really hard is when we actually start trying to go past laws on the reality world based on the emotional world, right? That's a place, that's a dimensional overlay. And spiritual realities, when we go and place those on the physical reality, it's like, I have a friend who, her daughter listened to The Power of Now in the car every day, all the time. It was on in the car constantly. My friend was really into those kind of teachings. And one day, her daughter, I don't know, for whatever reason, decided that she was just going to be in the now, and she walked off into the forest, and she never came back. And it's a really sad story, because the when you overlay the spiritual reality on the physical reality of the wild woods and bears and food and provision and shelter and all of those things, it doesn't really work, right? And that's, unless you're going to become a master of those things, right? Like, in other words, I can go and I can do a spiritual check-in and say, oh, we are all one, and we are all part of the God family, and I'm a cell in the body of the God family, and you're a cell in the body of the God family, and together we make a really beautiful whole. Now, I have songs that say a lot of these kind of things, and that is wonderful and beautiful, but that is a spiritual reality. And the place that that isn't true is when we are in spirit form, and we are in a physical reality. We decided to come into this physical reality. Now, we have a spiritual self, and that spiritual self has unlimited power. And if it's in alignment with what we're wanting to create, and if it's in alignment with our soul's reason for being here and all of those things, then we can learn to identify with that part of ourselves and allow it to shift the fabric of reality. But we can't do that from a one-dimensional place, right? And so what we find is that the spiritual reality, which is where we come from, what's it all about, like the soul, the eternal nature of the soul, the nature of God, and all of those different things, those are spiritual realities. And when we go and we overlay that on our tax life, or we overlay that on the growing food, now there are ways that we can mix that together and produce really amazing results, right? We can take the physical reality and say, well, I'm still going to try the traditional way of growing a carrot, right? By planting it in some dirt and watering it, right? Now, like we can go into our imagination and do a carrot and water it and all of those different things in our imagination, but there's probably not going to be a carrot that comes into the physical existence. I mean, that's possible that we could get to the level of crafting, of being able to actually do something like that. But the Findhorn ladies, they were actually communicating with other dimensional beings. The landscape angels is what they called them, and they were co-creating with them. But they were still planting the carrot in the dirt, the carrot seed in the dirt, right? And they were still watering it, but they were living in a desert, and they co-created with these entities to find out things that they could do to add to the soil. And that's a really big way that we can co-create. And when I talk about these dark entities that are running this world right now, they're not completely running this world, but they're invading and they're trying to take over. Is that, like, if you can imagine, there are people that have nefarious intentions, that have been going for centuries and have been going to the spiritual planes and connecting with dark entities to bring forward technologies. And they've been planting that in the soil. They've been planting that all over the place. And the byproducts of those inventions are atomic bombs. They are television, mind control. Like basically television is a emotional imagination on a screen that we can see, right? That we can all share in a common reality and see a particular thing. And there are people, my husband is someone who has no emotional imagination. He almost has to see the scenario walk out in a movie, this person having an affair and what it did to their life or whatever, in order for him to understand what the scenario might be. Whereas for most of us females, we can go into imagine great detail and stories. We could write books about the things that we imagine emotionally, right? So there's a lot of we have just a lot of difference. So these beings have been they've been co-creating with these dark beings, and they've been bringing forward technologies. The chemical onslaught that we have in our food and the processed food it's a shadow food. These things came forward from the shadows. And the way that they're manipulating the weather, and the way that they're manipulating I think it's like some kind of silver something that they're manipulating the clouds with. There's all of these technologies that they brought forward. Vaccines are a dark technology. There are, again, we've got even they've hacked into the things that are capable of manifesting in reality in our world. And they've been using information from these dark realms to entrap humanity in. And if we were to look at all the problems that humanity's having right now, it's, we've kind of overcome a lot of the real basic things. And right now, most of our problems come from these dark entities and their co-creations with other humans. And this is a spiritual battle that we are in. There is something that we can do about it. We actually have a very badass spiritual self. if we're willing to tap into it and willing to use it. And we can transform this world back into a paradise. We are in a place where we could do that. I don't know how much trouble we're going to have to go through to get there. I wish it was sooner. I wish we didn't want to. I wish we didn't ignore our spiritual self until it came, like where things just come crashing down. That's when we start really reaching, right? But we can do a lot of different things with our spiritual self. But when you overlay these things on the different dimensions, they just don't work, right? They just it doesn't. The emotional realities of life. That like we all have to come to our own true core understanding of our own personal truth, and it really is in listening to ourselves and being informed by the bigger part of us, and that's where spirituality is kind of a sister to the emotional realm, and it is the place that the emotional realm is how the spiritual self connects with us. So and this is why most physically dominant and mentally dominant people, why they have to go take really large amounts of plant medicines to have spiritual experiences, because they're not tuned to the emotional realm. They're little tiny babies in that realm, right? And that's how the spiritual self communicates to us. So of course they're going to be less spiritually dominant. So I would say females are more emotionally and spiritually dominant, and males are more mentally and physically dominant. And yet we have so much to teach each other, and we all have the capability of being four-dimensional. And it just comes from embodying the dimensions in each moment more fully. So that can look like, again, the yielding, right? Which the oversouls gave to me, which is a place where we can lay down, we can relax, and we can imagine that we're laying in the sand and we're being held, and our physical body is there, and we're tuned into our physical body, and we can the emotions, the water's just lapping up against the shore. And when we've dumped those buckets, that's how our emotional self feels, is when we let go of our resentments and all of our anger and all of our different things, which anger is an emotion, right? It's usually the only one that men allow themselves to feel. But it laps up against the side, right? So this is the emotional self. And then, so we're being held, and the emotional self is there. And then the wind is just moving just enough to freshen the air. And the sun is shining and warming everything, right? And this is just an exercise in how all four of these dimensions can come into one moment, right? The spiritual self feels like the sun shining on our skin. The emotional self feels like the waves wrapping up against the shore, moving. The air isn't building an air temple, but rather is freshening things, right? With new ideas and new ways of new learnings, right? And the physical self is existing and just being held. And so, when we bring all four of these together in one moment, our spiritual self actually can come into our bigger genie is let out of the bottle. So the more that you hold these four, the more the genie's out of the bottle. And so, so this is just the base foundation of personality and of the dimensions that are available to us. And the one that we've really, really tied in with in our consciousness is our tribalism. And right now, what we have going on is a big fight between the tribalisms. And the truth is that we're all part of the same body. We're all part of the same team. Nobody's an enemy against anybody else. We all have our place. We all have our thing that we uphold in life. And there's a beauty and a brilliance to that. And we need to keep our noses out of being experts in the other dimension until we've actually embodied that dimension, right? Like we don't all have six-pack abs, and we don't all have emotional ease and clarity. We all don't have mental sharpness and acuity. And we all don't have just that warm light that is just guiding us into ever and ever more creation. So, but we have those things available, but we have to open and expand to tune into them. So this has been my Miracle Sunday. I've got to go work on my taxes. Love to you all. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful week. We'll talk to you soon.